A king died because he laughed too hard. A famous writer died because a turtle fell on his head. Another man died proving his own argument in court. These aren't jokes. They're real, documented deaths from history. And the last one I'm going to tell you about is so ridiculous, it ended an entire bloodline. History loves to remember heroes, great victories, and glorious endings. We imagine epic battles, profound final words, and legacies etched in stone. But sometimes history is brutally, darkly, and hilariously ironic, because not everyone gets a dignified exit. Some people die in ways so absurd, so unbelievable, you'd think they were made up, but they're not. Let's start with a king. His name was Martin of Aragon, and in the year 1410, he was at the top of his game. One evening, he was enjoying a grand feast, a pretty standard night for royalty. He wasn't sick. He wasn't injured. He had no reason to believe this would be his last meal. In fact, he was having a great time. So great that he called over his court jester, Bora, for a bit of entertainment. The jester told him a joke. We don't know the exact joke, but it must have been an absolute killer, because King Martin started laughing, and he kept laughing. He was laughing so hard he couldn't stop, gasping for air between fits of hysteria. His face turned red, then purple. His guests watched, first with amusement, then with growing horror, as their king literally laughed himself into oblivion. He collapsed right there at the dinner table. Cause of death? Asphyxiation and cardiac arrest brought on by uncontrollable laughter. One joke was all it took to end a reign. It's a strange thing to think about a man whose official job was to bring joy, accidentally killing the most powerful person in the kingdom with a punchline. Now, let's fast forward through time, but stick with the theme of bizarre, unpredictable death. Our next subject is Aeschylus, one of the founding fathers of Greek tragedy. This was a man who lived an incredible life. He was a soldier who fought against the Persians in the legendary Battle of Marathon. He was a celebrated playwright in Athens, writing dozens of plays that shaped the future of theater. He survived political turmoil, wars, and even exile. He had seen it all. You'd think a man like that, if he were to die, would go out in some grand, dramatic fashion befitting one of his own plays. Fate, however, had a much more absurd script in mind. One day, while Aeschylus was walking outside, an eagle was soaring high above. This eagle had just caught its dinner, a turtle. Now, eagles are clever. To get to the meat inside, they drop turtles from a great height onto hard surfaces, like rocks, to crack their shells. On this particular day, the eagle looked down and saw something that, to its bird brain, looked exactly like a perfect, smooth, round rock. It wasn't a rock. It was Aeschylus's bald head. The eagle released its prey. The turtle plummeted from the sky and scored a direct hit. Aeschylus, the great warrior and poet, was killed instantly by a falling tortoise. He survived epic wars, political backstabbing, and the chaos of ancient Greece, only to be taken out by a combination of gravity, bad luck, and an eagle's poor eyesight. It's the kind of death you couldn't make up if you tried. From ancient Greece, let's jump to a more modern setting. A courtroom in Ohio in the year 1871. A lawyer named Clement Vallandigham was in the middle of a high-stakes murder trial. He was defending a man accused of shooting someone in a barroom brawl. Vallandigham was a brilliant and passionate lawyer, and he was convinced of his client's innocence. He had a theory. His argument was that the victim hadn't been murdered at all, but had accidentally shot himself while trying to draw his own pistol from his pocket. It was a plausible theory, but he needed to convince the jury. He needed to show them exactly how it could have happened. So, in a moment of dramatic courtroom flair, Vallandigham decided to reenact the scene. He picked up a pistol from the evidence table to demonstrate. What he didn't realize was that this pistol was still loaded. As he mimicked the victim's actions, explaining how the gun could have snagged and fired, he put the gun in his own pocket. And then, to prove his point, He pulled the trigger. The gun fired. Vallandigham shot himself in the abdomen, right there in front of the judge and jury. He collapsed, mortally wounded, but his demonstration was shockingly effective. He died the next day, but his point was made. The jury was completely convinced. His client was acquitted of murder. Clement Vallandigham won the case, saved his client, and lost his own life in the most ironic way possible. He literally died to prove his own argument. Our next story is about a man whose death was a direct result of the thing he loved most. In 2007, a man named Barry Helper was known for one thing, his passion. He was a collector, but not just any collector. He owned one of the largest and most valuable private collections of baseball memorabilia in the entire world. It had everything from Mickey Mantle's rookie jersey to Ty Cobb's dentures. This collection was his life's work, his pride, his entire identity. He spent decades and millions of dollars amassing these historical artifacts. One day, while he was in his home organizing and moving items around, tragedy struck. A massive, heavy cabinet, overloaded with priceless sports treasures, suddenly tipped over. He was unable to get out of the way in time. Barry Helper was trapped and crushed beneath the weight of his own collection. The very objects that brought him so much joy and defined his life were the instruments of his death. It's a tragic story, but also a deeply ironic one. He was literally killed by his own passion. So, what's the pattern here? We've seen a king, a playwright, a lawyer, a collector. Different centuries, different countries, different lives. But the message is the same. Death doesn't care how powerful you are. It doesn't care how smart you are, how famous you are, or how prepared you think you are. Sometimes the end comes in a way that's not poetic or glorious or meaningful. Sometimes it's just absurd. And that brings us to our final, and perhaps most gluttonous, death. The one that ended an entire royal bloodline. Meet King Adolf Frederick of Sweden. He ruled in the 18th century, but he's not remembered for his political achievements. He's remembered for his final meal. One night in 1771, the king sat down for a feast. And what a feast it was! He ate lobster, caviar, sauerkraut, and smoked herring, all washed down with copious amounts of champagne. That alone would be enough for most people. But for King Adolf Frederick, that was just the appetizer. For dessert, he consumed 14 individual servings of his favorite pastry, a sweet bun soaked in hot milk. 14. Hours later, the king began to suffer from severe digestive problems. His stomach, pushed far beyond its limits, gave out. He collapsed and died from total digestive failure. That one single epic meal was so infamous that it not only killed him, but it also effectively ended his direct bloodline's hold on the throne. To this day, history remembers him not as a great leader or a wartime king, but with a simple, brutal nickname, the king who ate himself to death. So here is the uncomfortable truth that these stories reveal. Most people do and die the way they imagine. We all hope for a peaceful, dignified end, but history proves that the final chapter is rarely that poetic. Sometimes it's just a strange, random, and darkly funny twist of fate. Now I want to hear from you. Which of these deaths shocked you the most? And what is the most ridiculous, unbelievable death you've ever heard of? Drop it in the comments below. Because if history teaches us anything, it's that fate has a very dark sense of humor. Thanks for watching.